Hi everyone, thanks for being with me. I need someone to explain to me what anti-Semitism actually is. I have been bombarded with through X, through YouTube, through social media generally, lots of conversations, lots of people with allegations that anti-Semitism is ripe in our community, and that there are plenty of examples where it does occur. Now, I don't meet up with Jewish people at all, and I don't know what their experiences are like, I must confess. But I do have a view which is basically anything that is said or done that denigrates another person or a group of people is simply wrong. And I'll put Islamophobia amongst all of that as well. Putting women down, putting people down because they have a disability, because they live in a certain area, because they have a different background to another person, come from a different country. I object vehemently to any of the allegations that are made about another group or another person that is unhelpful to them. It's something I've fought against my whole professional life, and which I stand here or sit here or I'm prepared to say today is something I find abhorrent. To put Jewish people down because they are Jewish is as wrong as putting down a Muslim person because they are Muslim, a Catholic because they're Catholic, a Protestant because they're Protestant, a Mormon because they're Mormon, whatever the case might be. I object greatly to any of that. But then I wonder why it is that we wish to add fuel to the fire around anti-Semitism. I'm not suggesting for a moment that it doesn't exist. It does. But what is the argument here? What particular point are people trying to make? And the biggest issue I have, I think, is that they try to bring together what Israel, the government, is doing in that part of the world, and the attack on Gaza, Palestinian people, and the West people in the West Bank. These are political decisions. These are not religious decisions. These are political decisions. There are many Jewish people who disagree also with what their government has been doing in Gaza, and it's an involved area, and we all must try and understand and sieve our way through that to understand the difference between the decisions that politicians make versus versus the religious content that sits within that particular government or that particular country, such as Israel. So we need to understand all of that, and I'm doing my damnedest, I must confess, to try and work through what all of that means. I don't think that it is Jewish people who are necessarily fighting this fight against Hamas. I think they're politically motivated, and Ben Netanyahu is particularly motivated to try and eradicate the country, not just of Hamas, but also of Palestinian people as well. And so on Sky News, which are forever bashing this issue around anti-Semitism, never, ever raising the issues around what's happening for Palestinians, and it's as if they don't care what happens to Palestinians in Gaza or the West Bank. They're completely blind to that. So we must focus on anti-Semitism. So here I've got a clip here of my favourite mate, Chris Kenny, trying to explain to us all where anti-Semitism is. And so what Chris would do in Sky News is they take a segment where there are some really bad actors on the Palestinian side, and they do say things, and there are people that say things that are just highly inappropriate and are wrong. at all levels. I agree, and I'm not going to object to the fact that Chris necessarily is showing these. I do object to the fact that they just pick these small instances and make a bigger issue of it, a bigger issue than what need be. But it's the one that fits with their narrative, and that's what seems to be important to them. It's not that important, but however, it is important to support the story that they want to tell about anti-Semitism, because to them, anti-Semitism means lack of support for Israel. So they're conflating the two together, Israel, the government, and so forth, along with the Jewish community as a whole. And I object to that, because it's not, I believe, it's not the true, it's not a true objective view as to what's happening in Gaza. So I'm just going to play this clip of Chris talking about this with another bloke by the name of Ben Freeman. And I've got a quote here from Ben Freeman's X, which will sort of tell you a little bit more, I guess, about who he is. But I'll let them start with this conversation, and then I'll break it up as we go through it.
Often fueled, of course, by hatred and ignorance, and the weak to non-existent response we often get from authorities and the so-called political leaders. Take a look at this Fox News report about what's been playing out in New York City.
Anti-Israel protesters clashed with NYPD officers Monday night in downtown Manhattan, setting off flares and smoke bombs in what organizers called a day of rage.
We need to understand, this is Fox News to start with, so who knows the validity of it. But nevertheless, it is an anti-Israel demonstration, not anti-Semitic. It is an anti-Israel demonstration.
Terrorist sympathizers proudly waved the flags of terror organizations Hezbollah and Hamas. Amid cheers, protesters called for an intifada, largely understood to be a call for violence against Jews. The protest taking place outside of a building hosting an exhibit honoring the 364 people Hamas murdered at the Nova Music Festival on October 7th. Tal Shimoni survived that festival and was inside the exhibit during the protest.
I felt like I'm back in October 7th. I got a panic attack.
Yeah, I mentioned that protest on the program last night. Just a compelling report there, isn't it? Let me bring in Ben Freeman, a Jewish author whose work focuses on combating anti-Semitism and raising awareness of the Holocaust. Thanks for joining us, Ben, and I hope you're enjoying your stay in Australia. My key question to you is we're seeing this hatred, the Israeli hatred of the pro-Palestinian protesters, which I see as a little different from the sort of anti-Semitism that's more deeply ingrained in Western countries. Do both of them feed off ignorance?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, and I think that's a fantastic question. And I think what people really need to understand about anti-Semitism is that it always shapeshifts to fit the zeitgeist. It's always changing and always evolving. So what we're seeing today is just a modern manifestation of those ancient ideas that you referred to. And if we break down the kind of libels and tropes that are attributed to Israel, they're remarkably similar to the libels and tropes that were attributed to Jewish communities 100 years ago and indeed even 1,000 years ago. And that's kind of the remarkable thing about anti-Semitism, because not only does it change, is that it always retains its original form. So anti-Zionism, which is what we're seeing right now, this kind of obsessive hatred of Israel, is a post-Holocaust form of anti-Semitism.
No, it isn't, because the issue here to me is that it isn't, what Israel are doing is invading another country, and justifiably so, given what happened to them on October the 7th. But nevertheless, they're invading this country with the view of eradicating the country of not just Hamas, but Palestinians. And I think we need to look at this as being from a kind of different perspective than what this guy has. Because one of the things that concerns me about this bloke was that on a post, he did say the length Israel has gone to minimise civilian casualties is extraordinary. Well, I just think that's bullshit to start with. There's nothing that validates that claim, and still it is accused of the most heinous crimes known to man. It is starving people, killing women and children. They are heinous crimes, and they need to be held responsible. If ever we need a reminder that the obsessive focus on a hatred of Israel has nothing to do with its actions and everything to do with Jew hate, it is this. It is not. This is not about hating Jews. This is about raising issues about a government that is indiscriminately killing people that have no involvement whatsoever with Hamas, which is a legitimate enemy, and completely disregard for the way the rest of the world is reading this issue. It has nothing to do with the Jewish faith. May the Jewish people conduct their religious beliefs in whichever way they like. The Jewish people are a loving, generous, courageous group of people. There's no disputing any of that. This isn't about them. So let's not make it about them. Let's better understand exactly what is happening here and call it out for what it is. Not do what Chris Kenny does, which is try to highlight the anti-Semitism, which does happen in some parts of the community. Not disputing that, it is wrong. But which isn't the issue here. The issue is about the killing of innocent people and wanting to destroy a section of the country that they consider it houses terrorists. But it's not proportional, and it is wrong according to the ICC and many other countries around the world. Let me know what you think about all of this. Subscribe to my channel, ring the bell, write me a comment if you must. Let me know what you think about anti-Semitism. Not necessarily that it's real, because it is real, it does happen, but hatred is wrong at any level against any group of people. Let me know what you think. In the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.